watching Medfield TV, community
Okay, so I
show.
will next go to the warrant committee and to see if we have a motion under Article 45.
Move that the town appropriate $460,531. The amount is printed in column headed Article 45, Scenario 1, Warrant Committee Recommendations, School at 4%, on pages 15 to 17 of the warrant report, to the various departmental operating budgets, in addition to the amounts voted under Article 11, the so-called balanced budget. Said amounts to be raised on the FY19 tax levy for the purpose of adding additional funding to the FY19 operating budgets, and further provided that the appropriation hereunder shall be subject to and contingent upon an affirmative vote of the town to exempt the amounts from the limitations on taxes imposed by MGL 59, Section 21C, Proposition 2.5, so-called.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a report, please?
The school department presents unique budget considerations for various reasons. While the schools are different than other town departments in that the services they provide are not directed toward any taxpayer, our schools truly benefit us all as they serve Medfield's future, our children. It makes for a difficult and complex discussion. That Medfield schools constitute roughly 68% of the town's budget is a fact that is both inescapable and daunting. It projects to 70% this coming fiscal year. However you slice it, any increase in the school department budget above the 2.5% threshold is going to have an enormous effect on the overall town budget and, by extension, the other town departments. With that in mind and viewing the fiscal landscape of the town, the Warrant Committee determined at the beginning of the budget season that a 4% increase in the school department budget over the past fiscal year would be a fair increase. This guidance was provided to the school department and the school committee in December and has been the position of the Warrant Committee publicly and consistently throughout the entire process. Over the previous 3 years, the school budget has been increased by an average of 4.34% each year. This year's guidance is comparable to this average and identical to the percentage increase in FY17. The increase being recommended by the Warrant Committee would amount to $1,321,431. This number is roughly equivalent to the entire projected new revenue the town will have to distribute across all departments in the coming fiscal year. We believe this is a fair increase that balances the difficult financial position the town is in with the reality that schools are one of the key drivers of our town's success. For these reasons, the Warrant Committee strongly and unanimously recommends passage of Article 45 with a 4% increase in the school department budget.
Okay, thank you. And again, reference was made by Mike Pastore to pages 15 to 17. So that's where you would be going to look at a comparison of the budget that he just recommended and moved as opposed to the budget that we just voted. So the delta between the scenario with the 3% increase versus the 4% increase is set out on those pages. So, questions, comments? Sure. Please, no.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. On behalf of the school committee, we make a substitute motion that town meeting approve the budget as reflected on pages 18 through 20 of the warrant report. More specifically, that the school budget be amended to $35,070,361.
Okay, so that's an amendment to the motion, the 4% motion made by the warrant committee, and that's at 6.16%.
It is.
And you can reference those numbers and that increase in the delta by looking at pages 18, 19, and 20 when you compare that to the balanced budget that we've already voted in Article 11. So everyone draw your focus to that, and why don't we have a little presentation.
On the motion, Mr. Moderator, the superintendent is prepared to give some informational slides, and then if we could speak to the motion.
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of town meeting this evening. As always, I'm proud to represent the 2,633 town residents that can't be here to vote this evening. We have a few slides that I want to go over this evening and talk a little bit about the difference between the 4% and the 6%. Why is it a 6.1% increase this year? And I think you have to go back to FY05 to get numbers like this in the school department. FY05, the increase was 7%, FY06, the increase was 5%, FY07, the increase was 9%, and FY08, the increase was 5.2%. So we haven't had these numbers in a long time, but I think it's important to understand the context of that this isn't the first time the school department is coming before you with an increase of over 6%. So this 6.1% increase adds a teacher in first grade, 2 teachers in second grade, 1 in third, 1 in fourth, and 1 in fifth. So we've seen a spike in enrollment in our elementary grades. Just this past summer alone, we had 104 students move into Medfield that were new to Medfield. Not all in the elementary grades, but many were in Memorial School. So we've had class sizes that are 24 and 25 in both the Memorial School and at Wheelock School. This budget also adds 2.5 special education teachers. It supports the cluster model at the Blake Middle School. So one of the things that we had done originally in that first budget, if you had gone to the public hearing, you noticed that we removed 3 teachers from Blake because we have a smaller group going through. But we got feedback and the school committee wanted to put those back in, so we ended up putting those 3 teachers back in. So it makes it a 3 cluster model at Blake Middle School just as it is today. Includes the steps and lanes and longevity and increases the teachers. So we're currently in collective bargaining with the teachers. We have not voted or ratified neither the teachers nor the school committee yet, but we're in that process right now. This budget covers all of those areas. It does reduce the funding for professional development. So we have 3 different buckets of professional development in the school department: conference and travel, course reimbursement, and then research and development. So we did not cut research and development, but we did reduce the other 2. One of the things we've worked real hard on the last 3 years is our elementary science curriculum, and part of this budget reinstates that curriculum piece, which our teachers have done a lot of training and have implemented this program. This reinstates that. We originally had cut the money out of that for next year. One important piece, it supports the upgrades to school security. I think that's something that we've all seen in the news recently. We've worked really close with the Medfield Police Department, and they've identified some areas that we need to make some improvements on in our school security. And the school committee in the town has supported capital the last 3 years in a row, totaling $100,000 in school security. We'd like to increase that a little more. It does reduce a 0.4 math teacher at the high school, and that's due to just course selection and enrollment. Increases to general education, special education, transportation. If you follow some of the issues that we've talked about at the school committee level, one of the things that we come across is the bus contract. We have to put that out to bid each year, every 3 years, and we get 1 bidder, only 1 bidder. And we do our best to get more, but only 1 bidder, so we're kind of stuck with that. So there's some increases there with both general education and special education transportation. Includes our special education tuitions. We have students that are out of district, so students that we can't educate in Medfield, we send them out of district, and that's about 23 students next year. And our support staff. So from town meeting to now, we've had additional hiring of 9 support staff, and that's really due to students that need that through their individual education plan. Again, it's a moving target in schools. It's not always what you approve that one at town meeting. There are still students that move in that have additional costs to the school department. One of the things that we've been trying to work on at the school committee level is online policy manual revision. This budget supports that. What we had to do, even though it's a 6.1, we did have to reduce our supplies and services throughout the district. So looking at principal supplies, teacher supplies, those types of things, we've had to reduce those numbers. So that gives you an overview of what the 6.1 does. Some of the reductions that we'd be looking at from a 4% increase, we'd look at teachers and related costs, so we'd reduce that 192. And again, we're not specifying grade levels here because we're not sure what that looks like right now, but those are some of the reductions in personnel. Our director of curriculum, which is a central office position, really important position that looks at the curriculum district-wide, but also oversees professional development, helps in teacher evaluation, et cetera. $140,000 there, and then that curriculum office secretary at $45,000. So our total payroll reduction from that 2.1% decrease is $377,000. Some of the non-payroll areas that we look at, supply services, computer replacement is a big one, $85,000. That elementary science adoption that I just spoke of, the enhancement to school security at $130,000, the buildings, grounds, and maintenance, school committee expense, and athletics transportation. Total non-payroll is $335,000, total reduction $713,000, and that shows you the delta between what the school committee has approved at 6.16 in the warrant committee's recommendation of 4.0. And that just gives you a summary of what the original, the 4% is the warrant committee. The original presentation at the public hearing was 5.92, then the school committee voted at 6.16.
Thank you. Mr. Morrissey, could you just go back and repeat the number at 6.16 that you had for the total school budget?
$35,070,361.
Okay, so there's between, under total school budget, under the scenario 2, 6.16 on page 20, it says $35,077,769. So we've got
Friendly amendment, I think there was a rounding difference between how we calculated it and how the town calculated it.
Okay, why don't we leave the number that's in the book here? Okay, just a simplicity. Other comments from the podium?
On the motion, if I may, Mr. Moderator. The school department, the school committee does not come before town meeting lightly. It's been 8 years since we've been here looking for an override. If you direct your attention, there's a chart in the warrant, which I had open to and then got distracted by the numbers, on page 21 that shows the history of overrides in the town. This is my 9th year on the school committee. It's been since 2012 that we came before you for an override. That's an unprecedented length of time in the history of the Proposition 2.5. We're quite proud of that. We're also a little ashamed of it because this operational deficit has been in place for several years. We've avoided, as best we could, coming for an override while the town had other priorities in terms of the public safety building, public works building. And we reached the point where we knew an override was becoming inevitable. The most important reason we're coming this year is that we prefer to do it in one vote rather than in a death by 1,000 cuts. Could the school department live with less than a 6.1% increase? Of course we would. Could. We would be back here next year and the year after and the year after seeking further overrides to Proposition 2.5. What we've done in the past, what we did in 2012, was seek an override that allowed us to continue to grow the district over a period of time without significant overrides. And again, we've been able to do that for 8 years. We expect this override would enable us to go a good period of time again without coming back to the voters. Education is dynamic, it's not static. We're not running factories. We're not still teaching Dick and Jane. Our enrollment fluctuates, but the cost of the district doesn't just fluctuate with enrollment. Teachers are not automats. We have different kids today than we had 7 years ago, different needs today than we had 7 years ago, and we have a different budget requirement than we had 7 years ago. So we're happy to answer questions, but that's us on the motion.
Okay, we're going to first ask if there are any questions. So before we have comments, if there's any questions, just please approach a microphone. Anybody have a question for Mr. Morrissey, Mr. Marsden? If you do, please raise your question.
Hi, Lee Treadway, 14 Kenny Road. So I just want to see if I understand this. What you're suggesting now is that if I look at page 13 with expenditures, under the warrant committee recommendation, we are at a deficit of $1,886,000, and with the 6.1% increase the school committee is recommending, we're at a deficit of 2.6. Am I reading this correctly? Is that what's going on here? So that the overrides will amount to somewhere in that ballpark, $1.8 million to 2.6? Is that correct? Is that a correct interpretation of this?
I don't know if that's to us, Mr. Moderator. That's the way we understand it. The difference between the warrant committee's recommendation and our motion is about $176 on average to the taxpayer.
I don't know what it works out to be to a taxpayer, but again, I'd just like to get my question answered.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, projected income is 66,290. Again, I'm on page 13.
Let me try to answer that. I prepared a projection of the override necessary to fund the operating budget based on what I was instructed to do, and that was to end up leaving a free cash balance at the end of town meeting of $1,750,000. Now, free cash at the end of July 1st of this year was $2,886,000. So in order to fund the deficits that are projected and to get the free cash balance to $1,750,000, these are the figures that I came up with. You would need, for the 4%, you would need an override amount of $950,000. To get to the 6.16%, you would need an override of $1,664,000. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, that's what I really want to understand what the impact of this is, because on 13, we have projected revenues, and it seems to me that's kind of where we start in this whole big process. What can the town expect to have for revenues, which you've got projected here as 66,290. And I'm just trying to get sort of the big picture and therefore understand what the real impact of the school board budget.
The big picture, if you take a look at the review of town finances, our total normal revenues are going up about 1.5 million. It's a little difficult at this point because the state hasn't approved the budget, and we don't know what the new growth is, but it's roughly in that range. By taking some other funding sources, for example, we have been using the reimbursement for school building assistance for the 2002 projects. That gives us about another $1,163,000, I believe. We are using $450,000 from accumulated interest on the 18 million school building assistance Bureau gave us. You add up all those things, and you come out with a total increase in revenues for the entire town budget of about 5.8%. The total budget of the town is up, I think it's in there a little over 9%, 9.3 or 9.4. So there's a gap there between the total revenues of 5.8 and the total expenditures request of the 9.3 or 9.4.
Right. And then just one other comment. I'm sure, like many other people, my taxes have gone up 30% in the last 5 years without any overrides. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, we'll have an opportunity as well for further comments. Let's stick with questions if we could, either for the folks up here on the stage or for the folks at the podium.
Yeah, I guess I'm just going to throw it out there. Do we have an option to vote on a 5.92% increase instead of a 6.16% increase for the school budget?
5 point.
The original requested one, which got most of us parents pretty much most of what we wanted.
If the amendment fails, then there could be a subsequent amendment.
Bob Sliney from 6 Overfield. Just a question, the difference between the number of teachers that are in the system between the 4 and 6%. I see you add some on the 6%, but you said to get down to the 4%, you'd have to terminate. Do you have a little clarification on how many teachers would be affected if you went to the 4%, what your
Sure.
population would be?
So some of them would be potentially new hires. So we're looking at, our budget has 6 new teachers in it, classroom teachers in it. We wouldn't be able to hire all 6 if we got the 4%. We're probably looking at hiring 2 or 3 with the 4%.
So my children are way past the school, but they benefited in the past. So what kind of a student-teacher ratio do you end up with? You mentioned the number of new students coming in, what you have to add. I presume that's not just a number that you think, what does that do to the student-teacher ratio?
We currently have in the elementary levels 23, 24, and 25 in some. This brings it all down to 20, 21, 22.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll entertain comments at microphone number 1 and number 2.
I'm back. I forgot to give my name last time. Renee Howley, 3 Harding Street. So as a parent of a rising 6th grader and rising 5th grader, I was one of the ones who was adamant about needing to keep the clusters at the middle school. For those of you who have kids who have aged out of the system or who are older, something to understand. My child, we moved here when he was in 2nd grade. We have lost a teacher in that grade every year since we've been here. That is why we are where we are now. We've dropped those teachers. Enrollment has increased again. You had a little blip with the classes of 25 and 26 where they were lower. We were 162 kids when I moved here. His class size now is about 182, projected to grow by another 5 kids. If we drop a cluster at the middle school, and because of the cluster model, that means dropping 3 core teachers. Our English, math, and social studies classes for our children entering adolescence, entering the peer pressures associated with social media, they are going to have class sizes of 24 or 24 kids. They do not deserve that any more than our 1, 2, and 3 grade kids deserve to have the class sizes they have today. We have a whole association of small advocate moms working for this. I don't want my taxes to go up any more than anyone else's, but our kids deserve this education that Medfield has so fantastically given them over the past few years. And I want my kids to have the same education your kids got when they went through Medfield. And they're not going to get it if we have to keep cutting teachers. Thank you.
Good.
Jack Wolf, 17 Harding Street. I've taken off my jacket so you wouldn't think I was anyway associated with the Warrant Committee. A few thoughts relative to schools. We have good schools here without any question. In fact, we have absolutely great schools. Over the past 10 years, our high school has on the average been ranked number 8. Our total school is number 16. Average that to number 12. And just think about the fact that we have 13,700 school districts across this nation. That puts us in the top 1/10 of 1% of the schools in the nation. Massachusetts, 8 years in a row, has been the best state in the nation for education. So let me assure you, for all of you in the room who are parents, we have terrific schools, and you do a great favor to the school system. You provide high intellectual content in the schools, in the children that are present in our schools. That makes education just a bit easier. Second point, Mike mentioned that 68 to 70% of your tax dollar goes to the schools. All of us as taxpayers benefit from the schools. We benefit in terms of great quality of people in the town. We benefit in terms of higher prices, higher housing prices. We also benefit in terms of having well-educated children. But let's remember that all of us pay 70% of our total tax dollar to the schools. 42% of the parents here are the ones that are benefiting from that. So of all total families across our town, only 42% have children in the schools. 58% of all the families in town do not have children in the schools. Third point, if we look across 10 years and we go back to 2009 versus the projections for 2019, at that point in time, our school budget was $26.1 million. It is now projected to be, per Jeff's discussion, $35.1 million, up $9 million. The school population has gone down from 3,002 down to 2625 right now, projected to be 2656 next year. If we just do the simplest of calculations, take the total amount that was spent, divide it by the number of children in 2009, do the same thing in 2019, there is a 52% increase in the cost, gross cost per student. 52% for basically the same product, a superbly educated child. So when someone mentions a 30% increase in their taxes, the driver for our taxes is primarily our school system. Brings a lot of benefits, but it's doing it at an increasingly rapid cost. Supporting these schools, we have a great teacher team. Without question, if we have good education, we have it because we have great teachers. But our teacher, median salary, $90,000. Median salary, $90,000. Add fringes to that, it brings it up to close to $105,000. And by the way, our teachers are contracted for a 184-day year. 184-day year for total compensation in the neighborhood of $105,000. I think that's fair, without question. And the last two pieces to think about are these. You heard that we have a $50 million school building coming up very shortly. We're clearly going to fund that. It's needed to replace the Dale Street School. $50 million in total, $30 million of which will be hitting our tax rates over time. So let me suggest that that is another major factor in school costs present. Last piece is it is seldom that the selectmen, the town administration, and the warrant committee unanimously agree. The selectmen, the warrant committee, and the town administration agree this year 4% is the right number for the schools. It will continue to educate our children well. As you heard from Jeff, we are not laying off our current teacher staff. We are just not hiring as many new teachers. So with that said, I would ask for an increase in the school budget of 4% as recommended by the folks at the front of the room, and we hope that you will find it in your minds to support that. Please think about that carefully. Thank you.
Jerry Potts, 7 Kerr Street. So while I look at the 6-1 number, I have to admit that's higher than I personally can support, but while Jack brings up some good issues, there also are some major differences in what's happened in education over the last 10 years. While I agree with Jack, since I have 2 kids who have graduated from the high school and one is actually employed, which is great. One is a junior in college and a junior who is currently at the high school. So I have put my kids through these schools and I've reaped the benefits of that, and I feel very blessed by that. I also ran 3 years ago for school committee, and I hammered the school committee on a couple of issues. One was on special education. And while Jack makes a good point on the average student getting a great education, to be honest, Medfield did a horrible job on special education. And it's something that I think, candidly, I'm embarrassed that we allowed to happen. So I give credit to the school committee and to the superintendent for stepping up significantly in addressing what was a major shortcoming in our education, not just for the benefit of those kids, but for our community. I think it was wrong the way that we underfunded that for years. And what it led to, from a financial standpoint, is major outplacements, one of almost $300,000 that we paid for. So it was not just an economic or a social benefit to take care of special education. It's the right thing to do. It's also a financial issue. And that is very different in the last 10 years than what we experienced. So that layered in, number one, for anyone who attended the strategic planning meetings a couple of years ago, special education parents came out in large numbers, and they should have. And I give a major kudos to the school committee and the superintendent for addressing it. That's built into this number. Number two is social emotional. If you look at the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey over the past few years, it is an epidemic of what's happening with student stress right now. Student stress is not addressed with large class sizes. It's addressed by teachers who get to know your kids and who can spend time in supporting them. We're not a manufacturer. My brother was a teacher for 41 years at Dover Sherburne, and the difference that all of you, I'm sure, had of a great teacher who impacted your life, that's what the personnel is. So I can give a quote of 90,000 for the median. We still underpay relative to all the other districts. We have a much lower per capita spending on per pupil in our school. And again, I'm not saying we should go to the average, but we are well under what other districts pay that are high performing. The third and final, for any of you, and Chris and I call it date night, which is the school committee meeting we've gone to for 3 years. It's fascinating. You should all go. Or watch it on TV. The ratings have gone through the roof. $130,000 for safety. There was an incident which took place where the lights, power went out at the school, and my daughter texted me from a classroom in a lockdown where when the intercom came back on, it said it was not a drill, it was a lockdown. There were students who were locked out of classrooms, and it was because the infrastructure, which again, the school committee had been investing to try to catch up, but sadly what we face as a community today is that public safety in the schools is not what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so to even have minimum level of investment to make sure that our students are safe, and I wish we were in a different world, and I certainly don't condone arming all the students, right? So if we're not going to do that, the least we could do is spend the money wisely. So I don't know if 6.1 is the number, but I know 4 is not what this town has said that it wants with 20 to 21 students to make sure that we take care of our special education needs because it's the right thing to do, that we address the student stress issues that are taking place with well-qualified, well-cared-for teachers, and for public safety, we have good safety in the schools. So I don't know if it's 6.1. I think 4 is way underfunding it. But I want to appreciate that Chris Morrison and the school committee at least are raising these important issues for us to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
My name's Helen Sheehy, 9 Hillcrest Road. I know that in this matter, nobody wants their taxes to go up. And there are always two sides. Now, I speak both as a parent, as a taxpayer here, and also as a teacher. I don't teach here, I teach in the Newton Public Schools. We are paid $10,000 more in Newton than Medfield. Granted, Medfield is not Newton, okay? But the standard of education here in Medfield, we're trying to keep up with Newton. I'm not saying one is better than the other. But my point is that when you say, okay, teachers are, I respect you. You know, for me, I come from the Philippines where we have respect for the elders, but also education is very important to us. And most of us, if not all of us, moved here in Medfield, for education. Now, at some point, my own children, one who is a junior and then the other one who is an incoming freshman, they will eventually leave Medfield. They will graduate. They will carry the legacy of a good school system long past fourth year high school. Now, my point is that when you said that at 4% you can still educate the children in Medfield at that same quality, I disagree. I honestly disagree. I teach kindergarten, and I have 20 children, at least one left. That's why it went down to 21. I am stressed constantly. And it's because the work is very hard. We are given a lot of mandates to make sure in kindergarten in Newton, they better read before they leave kindergarten. I mean, the standard keeps going higher and higher. the best, according to research, the best factor that will make a difference to your child's education is the teacher. It's not books, it's the quality of teachers. I am now at the top scale in our contract, and we are also negotiating our salaries. All I can say is this. In Newton, they also say, okay, you know, we're going to pit you against the other teachers because then we'll have to cut off the other teachers because these are your colleagues. It is not fair to do that. You cannot make the teachers, your children's education and your grandchildren's education on the backs of teachers. You really cannot expect quality education when you are underfunded. For instance, in the 2 other classrooms, there are 3 teachers in the sense that there's 1 teacher and then 2 special ed teachers. I'm the only teacher plus a special ed. My heart races all the time because we have to deal not just with education, but behavior management, special education. You need to think about that. So these teachers who are already at the top of their scale, they're not going anywhere because you see, they're too expensive to go to a different school. But you have to think of the morale of your teacher. You want your teacher to go to bat for your students, for your children. You want your teacher to do the best because we're human. You know, you have to make sure that you pay, that we pay, because I'm a taxpayer here too, that we pay our teachers. And I know there are 2 sides to this. Some people say, why do you want more taxes? Okay, but then just think about that.
Thank you.
We are known for our schools.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no more questions and comments, we're going to vote on that amendment. The amendment. Final comment.
Hi, Jen Polinsky, 12 Scott Road. I wanted to note that I think it was you, Mr. Wolf, said that there's a certain percentage, a little less than half of taxpayers have children in the schools and are paying for the schools, and a little more than half don't have children in the schools and are also paying. I thought about Dr. Marsden's first comment, was that he's here representing the roughly 2,800 children who can't vote. And I think we as citizens, whether we have children in the schools or don't, we have to represent those children when they can't speak for themselves.
Okay, we had a motion at 4% offered by the Warrant Committee. It was amended to the 6.16 number. You can look at the implications of those if you compare pages 15 through 17 and 18 through 20 to see what the numbers are. So we're going to put the motion to amend to the higher number to a vote right now. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Could I have a show of hands, please? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Yes, excuse me. Raise your hand. All in favor, please raise your hands. And opposed? Okay, I'm going to deem that the motion to amend carries. That's the motion. Are we going to do it? You're going to do another one? No. By the way, we have not voted for the budget yet. So before you leave, we still had another hold in the budget as well that we need to go back to address. So I appreciate you came, you got what you came for, but I think another couple of minutes, at least we're going to vote for the budget. Okay, let's go back and look at the other hold, if we could. Who held IT operations? Come down, please, if you would.
I'd like to say that I held it just so I'd have an excuse to stand up and walk. Steve Tower, 19 Winter Street. I am a new member here of the Medfield community. We just moved here in September. I actually kind of wish this would come up before the school committee vote, because as a father of 2 children in school, I was very much for any percentage increase the school council recommended. I just wanted to get a further clarification on the increase in the IT budget. There was like a 23,000 increase, and I just wanted to know what that was, because 20,000 doesn't really buy a whole lot for computer and networking, and I just wanted to see what that expenditure was for. Thank you.
I can answer that for you. You were talking about the operations budget?
Correct, yes.
So that is for, there's a new annual software cost for a fleet vehicle management system, and there was an online permit system as well as a new website platform. So those have to do with all of those specific cost increases.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, no motion there. So, any other further motions related to Article 45? If there are none, I will read the... Oh, got it. Oh, excuse me. Okay. That's it.
That's Article 11.
That was the original one. Read a new motion, taking into account the amendment. The new motion would read, under Article 45, move that the town appropriate $1,174,103, the amounts as printed in the column headed Article 45, Scenario 2, Warrant Committee recommendations, the school at 6.16%, as referenced on pages 18 to 20 of the warrant report, to the various departmental operating budgets, in addition to the amounts voted under Article 11, the so-called balanced budget. Said amounts to be raised on the fiscal year 19 tax levy for the purpose of adding additional funding to the fiscal year 19 operating budgets, and further provide that the appropriations hereunder shall be subject to and contingent upon an affirmative vote of the town to exempt the amounts from the limitation on taxes imposed by Mass General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, the so-called Proposition 2.5 requirement. Everybody clear? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And the motion carries on Article 45.